Are you spiritually bypassing or actually doing shadow work? Have you ever wondered if you're genuinely diving into the inner shadows or simply skimming the surface, calling it healing, while avoiding the real work? In a world overflowing with spiritual jargon, it's all too easy to mistake avoidance for progress, to convince ourselves we're evolving when we're really sidestepping our soul's deeper call. For me, shadow work is about a deeper calling. That's why I also call it soul work. Shadow work is not about bypassing discomforts, but about courageously confronting it. It's a sacred invitation to meet the parts of ourselves we've hidden away, to bring light to what's unconscious, and to transmute wounds into wisdom. Hello, welcome to Starwell Astrology. My name is Sharrie, and I'm a Western tropical astrologer with a very special interest in shadow work, or what I also call soul work. The way I got to learn this information was during my own spiritual journey that began over a decade ago. Since then, my studies have expanded into astrology, which also brought about an interest in astrotheology and esoteric philosophy. I noticed that there were similar threads that tied everything together, starting with astrology, which is the map of this matrix. At first glance, this seems like separate paths, but in truth, they're all different expressions of the same sacred wisdom. When we give astrology the reverence it deserves, we begin to see that it is the ultimate map of reality, both collectively and personally. Our natal chart is not just a personality profile, it also reveals our soul's promise, our natal promise. It shows us our wounded karmic patterns, but also our gifts, our talents, our natural skills, and also the tools we carry into this life for transformation. Shadow work or soul work, when we go deep enough, it reveals the profound interconnectedness to all things. It shows us that we're not passive victims of fate, although I do believe some things are subjected to fate. But ultimately, we are the perceivers and co-creators of our experiences in this matrix. And reality doesn't just happen to us, it happens through us. That's how much power we truly have. The ancients understood this, but somewhere along the way, this knowledge was hidden, distorted. What I've come to understand through this path is simple but powerful. We are the key, we are the essence of gnosis, self-knowledge. And through this gnosis, we unlock the gates of our inner temple. Shadow work means unraveling lifetimes of conditioning, the threads of old wounds and unconscious patterns that quietly govern our lives until we shine a light on it. Most of these patterns operate beneath our awareness, hidden in the depths of our psyche. And it's only through conscious effort that we begin to see and heal them. Shadow work is, at its core, the art of making the unseen seen. And once we start to see the unseen, it unfolds in ways that are surprising. If what I'm saying resonates with you, perhaps you're feeling the stirring of curiosity about shadow work, then I invite you to join me every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern for a free shadow work workshop. I offer this as a way to serve and share what I have learned over the past 10 years and how it has helped me. During these gatherings, I offer practical steps for starting this practice and support for wherever you are on your journey. If you feel called to begin or deepen your own shadow work practice, simply email me at starwellastro@gmail.com to join us. I consider shadow work a cornerstone practice, a pivotal part of any spiritual journey. In fact, even if you're not on a spiritual journey, this can open you up to such a huge paradigm shift that allows you to have such a different and broader perspective on yourself. It helps you to make conscious choices that feel more authentic to who you are. So I'll go as far as to say that avoiding this essential work, especially if you're on a spiritual path, in my view, is spiritual bypassing. If this message resonates with you, I invite you to show your support by liking this video and subscribing if you haven't already. And for those seeking a more personalized journey, I also offer natal chart readings and one-on-one shadow work coaching. If you're interested in diving deeper into your own natal chart and understanding yourself from the perspective of shadow work, then you'll find my contact information below. Many of us claim we're doing shadow work, when in reality, we're engaged in self-development, and they are not really the same thing. Shadow work is an endeavor that can easily become self-development. But self-development, though it's helpful and supportive, it's still a mask, a way to distort our shadows. And I know that might upset those people who really believe in their self-improvement and self-development techniques, but this is why I say shadow work can really be soul work, because when it's done at its deepest level, you are working at the soul level. You're not working at the personality level. Self-development is for the personality. Shadow work at its deepest level is for the soul. It's tempting to soothe over our discomforts, especially since true shadow work is an invasive process that can make you squirm, really, when you have to face your emotions such as guilt, shame, or jealousy. These are not easy feelings to acknowledge. If we feel vindictive, nobody wants to admit that they feel that way. If we want revenge, most of us want to pretend that we don't want revenge, but that's precisely the heart of shadow work. The goal isn't to dwell in our pain or become defined by these emotions. It's to become aware of how they're triggered in our daily lives. And instead of suppressing them the way that we have been conditioned to do, we start to make ourselves aware of it. Because these feelings are uncomfortable. Our instinct is to change them, to fix them, to improve them, to get rid of them, to ignore them. We do whatever we can to just pretend that it's not true. Yet shadow work is about integrating these unconscious parts of ourselves, which means facing what arises without blame, judgment, or deflection. And this includes our uncomfortable feelings. So instead, once we face what we feel, we first feel it fully and then surrender to the feeling, allowing it to exist without attachment and let it guide us to its root cause. This is when you're going deeper into shadow work. If you're trying to make a connection to what this is related to in your past, especially the first 7 years of your life, this is when you're really understanding the root cause. A lot of us want to gloss over this, but it's important to understand the roots. You just need to understand, or at least have some awareness of where this originated, even if you don't have a specific memory around the connection, just the feeling itself, where this feeling first became something that you are familiar with is enough to make a connection to its root cause. For example, shame. Now, shame is something that, even though it's a feeling of shame, it has a certain energy that we feel in our bodies. Now, if you're really being introspective and doing the self-investigation, you can trace that feeling back to a period in your life, usually before 7 years old, where you felt that shame. Now, even if you don't have specific memories of an exact event, the feeling can be traced back to that point. So then you understand why it's actively living in you, even though it's unconscious. So this is the work of shadow work. I don't know of another practice or another way to become aware of the connections to our emotional triggers without feeling them. So this practice is not for the faint-hearted, nor it is for those who prefer to keep life tidy and predictable, or to live in sunshine, bubbles, and rainbows. Reality is not that, at least from my perspective. It's a mixture of great times to really crummy times. Awareness of this roller coaster is what we're working on. Awareness of how we're triggered by the waves of life and how we are reacting to those waves is the practice of shadow work. Shadow work isn't about fixing, tweaking, or avoiding what's uncomfortable. It's about approaching what we must face within ourselves with unconditional self-love. Admittedly, that's a tall order because we're conditioned to blame, judge, criticize, or if we can't even do that, just completely deny. But because this is shadow work, we want to make ourselves aware of how we are feeling, what we're feeling, and how we're being triggered by what we feel, how we are reacting. Make the reaction conscious. And to make it conscious, we must become aware. But if we make it conscious and we try to change it, then we're not integrating what we need to integrate. So, for example, envy. You feel the feeling of envy. It doesn't feel good. That doesn't mean you have to live there, but you feel it and you know that it's there. You have acknowledged it and you face it in that moment. And the fact that you have made that conscious is how you integrate it. Because now you realize that there's a side of you that is not so pleasant and you're now aware of it. It's not suppressed. It has not been distorted, where it can continue to live through you unconsciously. Now that you're feeling envy, how you respond is more conscious. If you are not conscious, you tend to react. And usually we do this by distorting it and blaming and coming up with a whole bunch of stories around that feeling instead of just admitting, I feel envy. This is what makes shadow work challenging. However, it's the most rewarding practice you can do. I can't stress how rewarding this is because it's such a shift in your whole way of thinking. It's like a paradigm shift. You end up in a whole new reality in how you see yourself more so than anything else. It's not about other people. How you see yourself in your own reality shifts big time. Now, I understand that by sharing this, I might lose half of you. Perhaps my words don't resonate, or this message simply isn't what you're ready to hear. And the reality is that most of us aren't prepared to confront the wounded parts of ourselves. We'd rather have tools and strategies to shield us from all pain. For those of you who are still with me and you notice resistance bubbling up as you listen, I invite you to stay open just a little longer. Gently question the source of your resistance. Notice the thoughts and the feelings that are getting triggered. And even as you continue to engage with what is being shared, this is what self-witnessing is. I've made many videos in the past on that. It is the key ingredient to shadow work. So it's simply this: when you feel resistance to what I'm saying, perhaps an unconscious wound is being gently triggered, causing you to close down, tune out, reject, ignore, deny. This is completely natural because we're responding like this all day long. But here's where your real power is: that you are aware of the trigger and you have the power to be aware of the trigger. You can notice it as it's happening. You can choose to stay present. That is power. If you did not have the power of awareness, then you would just be it. But we have that power to see ourselves as we are reacting to life. And that is where we can become the observer and make conscious choices. All it costs is a bit of your time and attention and the willingness to intentionally practice. If you continue to observe your thoughts and feelings and stay aware and surrendered without clinging to or rejecting the experience, you are practicing shadow work in that very moment. Rather than reshaping your discomfort through blame or denial, you allow the feeling to exist. You let it be there and be willing to learn from what it is you're resisting within yourself. It is rarely easy. So it does take the intention to really want to do this. It's here at this very edge that we're most tempted to bypass the shadow work process. The urge to control or shut down or tune out is strong because it's familiar. It's our protective instinct. But I invite you to simply notice that urge and stay with yourself a little longer. And if you've managed to stay and listen this far, congratulations. You have already stepped through the doorway into the practice of shadow work. You have accomplished the simple yet profound act of witnessing your thoughts, feelings, noticing how you're reacting, and allowing these experiences to exist without attaching or identifying with them. And if you do feel identified, just notice that too. For example, I still don't like what she's saying. I still don't agree. Notice that you're rejecting this and remain open, stay curious, and continue to discover more about yourself as the witness. This is the heart of the practice. Notice if you find yourself judging, closing off, or rejecting what you're hearing, yet you can do so with an attitude of openness. Allow yourself to witness what you might have overlooked before. Shadow work is at its core about embracing and integrating our wounded aspects. This process becomes impossible if we're intent on changing or resisting whatever naturally arises for us to become aware of it in this moment. Notice we're conditioned to protect ourselves. How, when discomforts arises, our hearts instinctively closes because we've learned to do that. The heart has become numb or frozen. Any sensation that feels even slightly unpleasant sends up this old protective flag, urging us to avoid what's uncomfortable. Simply noticing this is a huge part of shadow work. We bypass the practice when we shield ourselves from our feelings. If you catch yourself wanting to deny, reject, fix, or adjust what you feel, you know that this very awareness is what opens the door to healing. The moment we decide a feeling is too uncomfortable and distract ourselves or try to change it, we enter a pattern of emotional distortion. We turn away from what we're meant to face in ourselves. This is simple, but not easy. This is the real work of shadow integration. As soon as we start talking about reprogramming, controlling, reshaping ourselves, we're no longer facing and integrating what's present. At that point, we're bypassing the true alchemy of shadow work and turning the practice into yet another self-improvement project and another way of catering to the conditioned ego, always trying to become something other than what we are. The gift of shadow work is that it roots us in the present moment, inviting us to truly embrace ourselves as we are, not as some idea we're forever chasing. And if you want to learn more about this shadow work practice, watch these videos. Thank you and goodbye.